Hello everybody, hope you're doing well, and at the time of recording this, Happy New Year! And welcome to part 2 of my showcase of my video game collection. So in part 1, I mostly covered all of my home consoles and the games that I have for them as well. And in this part, we're going to be focusing on my handhelds and the games that I've got for them. One thing I want to quickly get out the way though, is that there are a few things that I've acquired since actually making that first part, because of it being Christmas, getting a bit of money, and treating myself to a few games which are usually on the pricey end, but because of selling a few things and being able to get a discount through that, and as well as just being a bit lucky and getting them a bit cheaper than I usually can, I've acquired a few games here that I can tick off my list that I otherwise wouldn't have actually thought I would have gotten. So for the Nintendo 64, I've been able to get one of the more pricier titles, but it's a 3D platformer which I've stated many times that I love, and is a one by Rare. Released all the way to 2001, so really at the back end of the Nintendo 64 we've got Conker's Bad Fur Day, one that has always been very notorious for me. I remember not so much seeing the 64 game advertised, but seeing the re-release on the Xbox and thinking, why is that game rated for like mature audience when it's got like a nice fluffy squirrel on it? And it's always piqued my interest when I was a little kid, and now I hopefully can enjoy what is supposed to be is a great game. And to add to my Kirby collection, I've gotten one of the more rarer titles for the Nintendo 64, and that's Kirby and the Crystal Shards, aka Kirby 64. And from a lot of the gameplay that I've seen, I think I'll really enjoy this, and as well as that, the music is, I absolutely adore the music in that one, so I can't wait to go through that game. I'm kind of working my way through Kirby's titles in a sort of chronological order, so I'm currently playing Kirby's Dream Land 3, and then from after that I'll probably play this one, so that's great. I did state in the last part that I'm aiming to get just one game for the Sega Saturn before getting myself a Sadiator, one of those sort of cartridges you can put in the Saturn to play any games I can ever drive basically, and it's purely for aesthetic purposes. And that's Nights into Dreams, and I was able to find a really nice copy complete with manual and everything. But I will say, it's really hard to open this case. I feel like I'm going to break it all the time when I'm opening it. But there you are, that's it. And yeah, so I did get the 3D control pad, which I think I showed in the other part, and it plays like a dream. Nights into Dream, as I believe to say. And here's a PlayStation 2 title, which again, through selling a lot of things, I was able to acquire. And it's a one that I've been really interested in for ages, because not only is it a Capcom game, it's a survival horror game, which there's many great PS2 survival horror games. But this is a one that a lot of people really praise, Haunting Ground, which features a young girl who can't attack as far as I remember from looking it up. But her dog, who's an account companion, follows her around, and through the dog you're able to solve not only puzzles but be able to get through big evil bad guys, and I think it's all very gothic, so that really sounds up my alley. So that is the the main highlights that I wanted to show. But there's something else that I forgot to show when I was talking about my Switch, and I forgot to show you this big bad boy. Have you ever played any of these games? The Taiko how do you pronounce it? Taiko no Tatsujin. Drum and foam, this is absolutely awesome. So with this inside here, you get your own little sort of, it's not even a bongo, it's basically a drum that you hit on each side of it, and there's literally hundreds. In fact, if you pay for this new subscription, you can literally thousands of songs that you can play with. And it's basically quite a simple rhythm game in terms of literally only having to hit the sides of it and the front part of it. You know, it's not like something like pop music where you've got like I think something stupid like 12 buttons to hit or something like that. So it's not totally complicated, but in terms of how accurate you have to be and the intensity of hitting things, it's wild. So it's a thing that you could just play endlessly, and just it's really fun, especially if you've got other people around them to have a go and you try and beat each other's high score. But oh my god, the only issue I've got with the game, and it's not really the game's fault I suppose, is if you play it too long because of the scrolling, I suppose it'll be the problem with any sort of scrolling thing. Your eyes, just when you look away, you're just like, whoa. Yeah, for someone who gets migraines, especially migraine auras, I'll just keep thinking it's going to be a massive trigger, so I play it in short bursts, which is quite hard. But yeah, guys, so I just wanted to quickly show you them, and like I say, I'm always going to get a few games here and there, but like I say, probably in a year's time I'll show off the next updates of all the games that I've gotten. So, past all that, here is the collection of handhelds and the games, and of course, like I was doing last time, I want to go in a sort of order from when it was originally released, so we're going to be starting with the original Game Boy. So I don't own an original Game Boy, and the reason for that is basically the reason why I don't own a GameCube, which is I own other variants of Game Boys that are better than the original Game Boy, and other than, you know, sentimental values, if I was to have grown up with an original Game Boy, I don't see the point of owning one, and I didn't. As far as I know, I always had a Game Boy Advance. However, saying that though, years and years and years and years ago, as in before all of this ridiculous boom in prices of retro games, in a market in a place called Tynemouth, which is an excellent place for getting really cool stuff, even now, but back then especially for retro stuff, I managed to get this Game Boy Colour, which is got obviously Pikachu and Pichu on it, and anything Pokemon related now is just ridiculous in price. But I'm really happy to have this, and that's why I play my Game Boy Colours and of course original Game Boy games. And we'll go through these. So, this is Batman, and this is obviously coming off the NES variant of the Batman game, which I've already praised, but this is actually a very different game. It doesn't try and copy what was happening in the NES game. I've heard some people say it's like Super Mario Land with guns. So it's a really good platform, a very early title in the Game Boy library, but a good one. This is literally just called Donkey Kong, but it gets nicknamed Donkey Kong 94. This was released the same year as Donkey Kong Country, and I suppose was released for people who wanted something that was a bit more traditionalist in the sort of arcadey feel. Because the first few levels of this is very much like the original arcade Donkey Kong, and yet after that it expands into basically a puzzle platformer. Coming after playing Mario vs Donkey Kong, which was a childhood game for me, I realised this is basically a precursor to that. Very simple and you know, really cool basically. One of the highlights of the original Game Boy for the amount of levels that's there, the humour, and just addictive qualities as well with the puzzle elements. So it's a highlight, and you've got to get that game if you're collecting for Game Boy. And then we've got 3 Kirby games to show you. So in here is the original Kirby's Dream Land, one of the first Kirby games I ever played. And although very simple because of not having the copy abilities yet, I still think it's a really charming and actually really good title. And in fact, I've never really found a bad Kirby game, which is why I love Kirby so much. And with this, I will say, even though it is very simplistic, those of you who find that needs to beat the game and then try the extra mode, which is the higher difficulty, and that's pretty hard. It's pretty difficult. Then we've got Kirby's Pinball Land, which is obviously a pinball-based game. I haven't beaten this. How do you beat it? Well, basically there's technically 3 different stages that you can play. And you imagine obviously Kirby being a ball is the pinball itself, and with the pinball paddles, I think you call them, you try and work your way up higher and higher, and once you get to the very, very top, that's when you fight a boss. Yeah, you make one slip up, or pinball being pinball, something just happens out of your abilities, you fall all the way down. So it's very hard and quite annoying and a bit frustrating, to be honest. There is an addictive quality to it, I will say, because the music's really good in this. But yeah, there's nothing worse than building yourself way all the way to the top only to fall all the way down. And you get 3 lives in this. It's very difficult getting extra life, and if you lose and get a game over, you have to do everything all over again, because to defeat the final boss you have to beat all 3 stages. So I think I got to the 3rd stage, or at least you can choose whatever order, but yeah, I got to like a 3rd stage and I lost all my lives, and I was like, I'm not doing that again. So I might revisit this one day, but very difficult. And this one I haven't yet played, Kirby's Block Ball, which is basically like one of those old games where you have a paddle and you move it and the ball keeps getting rid of stuff. I've forgotten the name of that game, but it's like all on, you know, those really old Nokia mobile phones, those sort of games, featuring Kirby. And I think it has copy abilities in this one as well, which is quite cool. And I've always liked those sort of games as well. It's very simple, but I always find them very, satisfying getting rid of all the blocks. So that's supposed to be quite cool. But going more on the puzzle stuff, this is Quirk, which I think is a very underrated one, would highlight for the Game Boy. I mean, who wouldn't want to be that cool tomato with sunglasses, which he looks like he's giving the middle finger, but he's not. He's not that cool. It is the 90s though, so doing something like that would be rad and cool and all that. Anyways, yeah, so despite not really understanding what this is, if you just looked at the cover, it is kind of like a puzzle game. And like I say, really good one, and like the original Donkey Kong I showed you before, a lot of levels, so you could dedicate a lot of time to that. And I haven't dedicated a lot of time to this because I kind of gave up. This is Metroid 2 Return to Samus. I remember when I got the Game Boy Colour, it came with this. And it's just the same thing with the original NES one. Like, if there's no map, I really cannot be bothered. I just feel like I'm wasting my time. And it's just, some people might like that, I suppose, for the extra challenge, but that added confusion, it's just annoying. And again, I just feel like I could be spending my time better instead of looking over walkthroughs and things like that. So one day I'll be getting the remake that was for the 3DS, and I'll probably put the money towards selling this. So whilst it is cool to own this and I have for over a decade now, I've just never got that far into it. Yeah, so, of its time and all that, but not a one I'm revisiting. This is a very beat up copy of Super Mario Land, a game that is very short, but an amazing game. Very cool music. I love the music in this game. And it's so primitive, the graphics, like they're way worse than even the original NES. Like, it doesn't look 8-bit, it looks like 4-bit, if that's a thing. And yet, even then, it's just really, really good. I really enjoy the game. And then we've got Super Mario Land 2, 6 Golden Coins, which is a huge, huge game for me when I was a kid. A lot of highlights, a lot of scares, and a lot of anger. Why scares? Well, there was the music to this where when you would go and fight a boss, it would play this music, and it scared us as a kid. I remember there was a one where you were about to fight the sort of 3 little pigs, and that music just scared us, and I remember switching it off because I was getting excited thinking I was doing well, and I switched it off and didn't play it for like a week. Yeah. And anger, well, that's because, long story short, I was playing the game, and if you don't know about this game, if you get a game over because you collect a gold coin every time you beat a boss, in the 6 golden coins you collect, you then fight Wario, the main boss. If you get a game over, you lose all of them. You have to start all over again. And the first time I realised that, I punched the Game Boy Advance screen, which was my sister's, and it went all multicoloured, and yeah, I was in a lot of trouble and I felt so bad. And for my birthday or the Christmas, I got a Game Boy Advance SP. Well, sort of, my sister got it, but out of my own expense. But hey, it taught us don't have gamer rage even when you're 6 years old. So, but yeah, it's a great game and a big highlight for me, of course. Not kind of in order, I suppose. This is then Tetris. I mean, really don't need to say much. That is like the main Game Boy game that everyone thinks. And then I've got it under Wario Land, but this is Super Mario Land 3. So yeah, the first time you can play as Wario in this game. Really cool, even bigger in scope than Super Mario Land 2. You'll be spending a lot of time trying to find all the treasure, which is a big part in how well you do in this game, and the different endings that you can get. I got the best ending, so I made Wario happy, which is cool because Wario's my man. And it's a lot different gameplay wise to how the other Super Mario Lands play, but I think it's a great game. And then we've got Wario Blast. So Wario Blast is not so much a Wario game as it is Wario being featured in my mate Bomberman. So Bomberman, who I think is really, really cool and quite underrated in the amount of games that's been released to him. I don't know if Nintendo just decided, hey Hudson Soft, you're not selling many copies, why don't you just put one of our mascots on the next Bomberman game and you'll do much better. I have no idea. But it's basically just a quite simplistic Bomberman game with really good music. And it's a good Bomberman game, but yeah, not exactly an essential game, but I got it for really cheap, and it adds to my Wario collection, which I've got quite a lot of Wario games. And so that is my original Game Boy collection. And since I've already shown you my Game Boy Colour, it's only fair to now just go straight into the Game Boy Colour games. So if you haven't remembered, which I don't blame you, I'm about to show you a special box. And this is something that my mum, I believe, created when she was even younger than me, many years ago, and hand drew it. And originally, I suppose, maybe it's for makeup, or I think maybe it's to keep in water colour brushes and pencils and stuff. She very nicely gave it to me, and it is a perfect little store for all of my loose Game Boy games. So awesome, thank you, Mum, because she's watching this, I'm sure. One of my subscribers, obviously. And yeah, so in here is my Game Boy Colour games, as well as the Game Boy Advance and loose DS and 3DS game, actually. So not many Game Boy Colour games, not that there was that many Game Boy Colour exclusive games actually, but I will show you these funny looking things. Now what these are, if you ever see a Game Boy shaped game that's a different colour other than sort of space grey, that's because this is a Game Boy game that is compatible with both Game Boy and Game Boy Colour games. So you can play these on an original Game Boy, but with enhanced colours and graphics, you can enjoy them on a Game Boy Colour basically. So these three are Dragon Warrior Monsters. This is a spin-off to the Dragon Warrior games, where it's actually sort of like a monster collector game, a la like Pokemon and stuff. So if you like that sort of thing, especially if you enjoyed the sort of silver and gold era of Pokemon, then this is highly recommended. I haven't played too much of this, but it's known as one of the best Game Boy Colour games, so see if you can grab it. Then we've got this Essential, which I had to get alongside. In fact, this might have came. Oh no, this might be my sister's actually. So I don't know, but this you know complements the Game Boy Colour I've got very nicely. This is Pokemon Yellow, which is the most. Basically, if you imagine the original 1999 Ash Ketchum Series 1 Pokemon anime, this is the most akin to that in a game form, because you play as Ash technically, and a Pikachu follows you around. So yeah, it's basically an installment of Red and Blue, but a bit better because you made Pikachu there a bit more. And then we've got Wario Land 2, which is a bit more puzzle based from what I remember of this game, but still a really good one. But not the last Wario Land game, definitely not, because then we've got Wario Land 3, which was made purely for the Game Boy Colour. I'll be honest, I haven't played this yet, but I've heard the Game Boy Wario games get better and better, so I look forward to that. And this one, I'm going to put my hands up and say this is an import, which I really don't do that much. It's the only time I'll ever do that is if the PAL version of a game is ridiculously expensive compared to an American and Japanese version of a game. Because if you don't know, basically all Nintendo handheld games are region free, so keep that in mind obviously. But at the same time, this game never came out in the UK, and this is a game called Kirby's Tilt and Tumble. Now this is awesome, an essential game to actually own physically, because this game has inside a gyroscope, and other than selecting a few things and very occasionally pressing jump, I think, this game does not really use any buttons on the Game Boy Colour. You literally control Kirby throughout the game as if, you know, it's like a sort of Wii remote. You even flick them to do jumps and stuff, and that's how you progress through the different stages. So very unique game, very cool, and I also really recommend that you check out a sort of playthrough that was done by Games Done Quick, the guys who, through charity sponsorships, play games really quickly, and they've done a run of that game, and they play it on the Game Boy player on the GameCube, and by doing that it means that they literally have the full GameCube on the lap, and they use that to play the game and do it very well, so that's pretty cool. Also quickly to let you know, I do own a box Game Boy Colour game, and I got this a long time ago, but because of that it's a personal favourite, Tetris DX, aka Tetris Deluxe. And there really isn't that much difference between this and the original Game Boy version of Tetris, other than the music being different, and I prefer it, maybe because it's not overly played. And also, I just really enjoy it. I think there's a few more modes to this, and the difficulty can change a lot more. So yeah, this is an essential Game Boy Colour game, especially if you don't already own Tetris on the original Game Boy. So that's my Game Boy Colour game, so now I'm going to go straight onto the Game Boy Advance stuff. So maybe it's a bit redundant owning a Game Boy Advance, because I've already touched about owning consoles that are cross-platform or, you know, backwards compatible. And obviously the DS is backwards compatible with the Game Boy Advance. So I do own an original DS, but as I mentioned though, the only reasons why I would ever do that is because of sentimentality. And that applies heavily with the Game Boy Advance because that was my main gaming system, and you know, bundling with any, you know, home consoles, that was the childhood console for me. So yeah, this Game Boy Advance means a lot to me. I grew up with a lot playing games like that. This is an original Game Boy Advance, and I don't really use it that much, to be honest, because instead I own one of the biggest pieces of childhood for me ever, which was contained in this box, which is the Game Boy Advance SP Tribal Edition, which can be seen by many as a very out of date sort of looking thing, because it's just so early 2000s. But when I have a look at the tribal things, not only do I think back in the 6-year-old brain going, oh yeah, tattoos are cool, tribal tattoos are cool, but it just reminds us of when you would have cereal boxes or massive packets of Cheetos and you would go through and they would give you little things like peel on tattoos and stuff, so it just brings me back to those memories. Yeah, so I absolutely love the Game Boy Advance, and that's the reason why I own quite a lot of Game Boy Advance titles, which I'm going to show you right now. So because of the way these are laid out, I'm afraid they're not in alphabetical order, so I apologise to people who are a bit funny on that, but never mind. So the first one that's going to come up is Donkey Kong Country, which already came up on my SNES collection, but the Game Boy Advance ports are very important to me. So this isn't the first Donkey Kong Country I got for the Game Boy Advance. You'll hear about that a bit, well, I'll tell you now actually. So, the story goes, when I was about 5 or 6, I saved up money to get a new Game Boy Advance game. And I remember being in Game Station, which was Game, which is GameStop for you people outside the UK, but Game is a bad version of Game Station, which was way better, but it's sadly gone now. There's only Game, it sucks. Anyways, I was in Game Station and I saved up to buy a Game Boy Advance game, which I think cost £30 at the time, and I used to get £3 a week pocket money, so that was nearly 3 months of saving up. And all that time I was saving up, I didn't even have a game in mind that I wanted to play. So I remember my dad, who was with us and took us there at the time, was like, come on, just pick a game already, and just hurry up, we're in a rush for something. And for some reason, I don't know why, I just picked up the Game Boy Advance port of Donkey Kong Country 2. So I happened to pick up one of my favourite games of all time, and many would consider one of the best platform games at the least of all time too. That game absolutely blew us away and is a huge part of my childhood, and is the reason why it's in the top 3 games of all time. And people poo-poo the Donkey Kong Country Game Boy Advance ports, mainly because of the sound quality not being as good and maybe it's a bit screen crunch, but I never really noticed that. And in fact, the music is a bit different in some of the games, and there's even extras in these games too, such as more unlockables and mini games and things like that. But the problem is now, I remember when I made my gaming collection over 10 years ago, I owned 2 copies. I even see it.
Here on the walls is my Game Boy Advance games. So then we've got Crazy Racers, Donkey Kong Country 2, I've got that twice, don't know why.
I don't know where I got that second copy from, but I've went from having 1 copy to 2 copies, and then no copies, so I'm going to have to buy it again, which is such a shame, because I wish I had that save that I originally had back in the day, because I didn't have any walkthroughs or anything. I just used to spend so many times going through a level trying to find all the unlockables, and that's a lot of hours, but never mind, very cherished, and I went backwards and got the first one, which is still a great game, obviously. So yeah, anyways, moving on a bit. When I was in an airport, when I was about 7 or 8, I randomly picked up NES Classics Super Mario Brothers, which is the first Mario Brothers game, obviously, and it's just an NES port, no extras or anything, just that. And it's kind of interesting because other than Super Mario Deluxe, which is a Game Boy Colour game, Nintendo never made a 16-bit version technically of that game. I know you're going to say, what about Super Mario All-Stars? I mean for the Game Boy, because they had a thing called Super Mario Advance where they remade 4 different Mario games and yet never bothered with the original one. So that's as close as you're going to get, basically. interesting. So no, I never played it, and well, I did play, but I never beat it as a kid because of the whole, as soon as you get a game over, you start all over again. And it's only until very recently actually I beat it, because I used to get to 8-4 without an issue, but that last level, just I kept forgetting the pattern and I'd run out of time, and yeah, it sucks. Never mind. Then we've got Mario Kart Super Circuit, probably the worst one, to be honest. It's not terrible, but I think you can do better not only with Mario Kart games, but kart racing games on the Game Boy Advance in general. Which you'll see soon enough, but it's not bad. There's some classic, like Sky Garden and stuff. There's some good courses on it, but just not a one I return to. Then we've got Sonic Advance, specifically Sonic Advance 2, which again was a really huge part of my childhood. I absolutely adored that game. And alongside it, we have the first one, Sonic Advance 1, Sonic Advance 3. I'm surprised they've never been remade, or like re-released in some sort of collection, because Sega loved doing that and never seemed to bother with that one. More Kirby, with Kirby's Nightmare in the Dreamland. This is a remake of Kirby's Adventure for the NES, only with a lot more additional mini-games, better graphics, and just extended a bit more. I haven't played it too much, to be honest, but it's a classic. More Wario Land with Wario Land 4. So I've kind of got all the Wario Land games other than the Virtual Boy one, which emulate. Yeah, I'm not paying 500 quid to get a Virtual Boy for us to get a headache and spend God knows what in the Wario Land game. No, not happening, sorry. But this is considered by many the best Wario Land game, in fact the best Wario game in general. And I've got to say, Wario has always been great for music, and the music in this is ridiculously just so eclectic, which I always love. And you'll know if you've played the game, but graphics are great, and it's just a fun time. This is a recent addition. I remember seeing this for some reason, it always caught my eye. And maybe it's because I used to watch the anime that used to be on TV back in the day, and I'm talking about Astro Boy, the Omega Factor. Now this game is considered one of the best Game Boy Advance games, and that's because it's made by Sega. And what they've done here is almost like a beat 'em up slash platformer slash shoot 'em up kind of. And this is actually really in depth, and the graphics are amazing as well, really good and really addicting. And it's just got that over the top Sega-ness to it, but not to the point where it lacks on the gameplay variant. It's awesome, really enjoy that. And speaking of Donkey Kong Country, here is Donkey Kong Country 3. And this is actually, out of the three of them, the most essential one to get on the Game Boy Advance, because the biggest surprise I had, never mind with the additional mini-games and stuff, originally when I played the SNES game, was the fact that the soundtrack is totally different. David Wise, who worked on a bit of the original soundtrack on the SNES one, got rid of most of the music and redone the music on this port. And to that, many people think it's sacrilege, because the music is literally really different. To some stages where you would have ambient, you instead get some sort of weird yodeling tracks and stuff. It's quite strange. But there's something to that game, because I grew up with it, it just sounds right to me, I suppose. So again, rose-tinted glasses sort of thing, but if you're looking for something different, then try out the Game Boy Advance port of Donkey Kong Country 3. Then we've got another Kirby game here, which is Kirby and the Maze and Mirror. And again, haven't played this one, but I'm looking forward to this, because this is a Metroidvania Kirby game, which sounds so cool. And again, it's supposed to be one of the better Kirby games, so look forward to that. And when I was talking before about how there's better kart racing games on the Game Boy Advance compared to Mario Kart Super Circuit, that's because I go to Konami Crazy Racers, and I really recommend you guys pick this up. Because it's cheap, I thought it'd be one of those things that become really rare, because I always thought it was quite obscure. And this is a kart racing game that was released, one of the first released games on the Game Boy Advance. I'm sure this actually came out before Super Circuit, and it's better. The controls are better, the stages are more fun, and the music is great. I don't know, I just feel it's got way more personality. And obviously back in the day, I had absolutely no idea who any of these characters were, because they're all obviously Konami based. And even now, unless you kind of know your video game stuff, you're not going to know many of these characters. So it features characters such as the rabbits from Poppin' Music, it has Dracula from Castlevania, it has Gradius, it has one of the characters from Metal Gear. So those are more well-known Konami titled games obviously, but there's other ones where you can see this guy on the front here. He's from like a baseball series that have never ever been released outside of Japan. So not many people are going to know that. There's got Mystical Ninja, the Goemon guy, so kind of some people might know that. Poppin' Twinbee, the girl from there. I could keep going on and on, and obviously, but you know, these aren't like, oh yeah, I know them. But yeah. There's even like the penguin from Antarctic Adventure, and there's a stage featured on that, which I really thought was cool. So yeah, I really recommend that. It's just way better in my opinion. Last batch. This is Pac-Man, the Namco collection. Really good. This is about 4 or 5 different Pac-Man games, not really focusing on the original Pac-Man, but the different arcade games that came out afterwards. And you get some really cool ones. I don't know the name specifically of the Pac-Man games, but there's a one that's basically 3D, which is really cool. And there's Pac-Man, you can jump over the ghosts, so there goes all of the difficulty there. And there's a really cool one which was done, I think, in the sort of mid-90s. And I'll show some gameplay here, but it's totally nuts. It's got bosses and things like that, and really like the sort of aesthetics on that. So I think again you can get this quite cheap, so I recommend that if you're a Pac-Man fan like me. And then we've got Mario vs Donkey Kong, which, as I've mentioned before, is a childhood game for me, but not exactly a beloved one, because I used to get so frustrated with this game. And with this game, there are so many levels, it's ridiculous. Once you've beaten the main game, it unlocks the same amount of levels in a plus game, which are even more difficult. And I think once you've done that and beaten all the levels in that and get full 3 stars, it unlocks even more. It's a huge game. And there was an extra stage I remember as a kid, and I could not for the life of us find out how to do it. I must have spent dozens upon dozens of times, and I just dropped it. I just thought, forget it. So years and years and years later, when I thought, I'm gonna get you now with my bigger and better brain when I'm older, I'm gonna understand, and I was like, I still don't get it, I'm stumped. So, you know, you kind of just admit defeat and you look it up and see how you do it. And when you do that, guys, you fall into 2 different categories, don't you? You either go in the, why didn't I think of that sort of one? Or you go in the, how in the hell was I supposed to have known that? And it was one of them, which annoyed us too. So yeah, this is a really difficult game, but it's sort of classic. Which one should I show? I have to show this one. Mario and Luigi, which is a sort of RPG series, which I haven't played any of them, is supposed to be a really good series, and this is the first one, I believe, for the Game Boy Advance, which is called Superstar Saga. It's supposed to have a lot of humour to it. I don't know how much it sort of relates to the Paper Mario games, because I know those are sort of RPG games as well, with a lot of comedy based in them. So, but I've heard they're really good, so one day I'll get around to playing that. And last Game Boy Advance game is Magical Quest 3 starring Mickey and Donald. It's such a weird one, I know you're thinking. That's because I'm a huge Mickey fan. You might have known that when you've seen my Sega collection and one SNES game. And that SNES game actually is called the Magical Quest. And the second game is called the Great Circus Mystery, I think, which features Minnie as well as Mickey. And I haven't got that yet on the SNES. But the third one, which is here, never came out over here until it came out on the Game Boy Advance, so that is why I own it. And that is all of my Game Boy Advance stuff loose, but I'm going to quickly show you a few boxed ones that I have. This is Metroid Fusion, and I believe this is, if you wanted to go in some sort of order, the 4th Metroid game, because there's first Metroid, Metroid 2, Super Metroid, and then this one. And my plan is I am going to be going through them in order. I managed to get a relatively cheap copy of Metroid Zero Mission, which is a Game Boy Advance remake of the first Metroid game, which I'm looking forward to, because like the Metroid 2 Return to Samus, I couldn't play it, I just thought it was ridiculous. So my plan is I'm gonna, once that comes in, I'll play that, then I'll probably get the 3DS game, then I'll play Super Metroid, either I'll just play it on the Switch online, I'd rather own it physically, and then I'll play this one. But I do remember when, you know, I've got a friend who had this, and I'm sure I used to remember watching him and being quite scared because it's quite a spooky game. And then we've got a game that another friend of mine was saying you have to own, which is Harvest Moon Friends of Mineral Town. Have you ever played any Harvest games, but Harvest Moon games? But I've heard this is actually an excellent one. I think it's supposed to be a remake of a PS1 game, but a lot of people say this is even better than it. So I'll look forward to that, obviously, when I get around to playing it. So yeah, that's it. And I just thought I'd quickly show you these. These are just some loose manuals that I've got. So there's Wario Land 2's manual, talking about how you can't die in the game, which is a big thing of Wario Land 2. And it's quite silly. And then we've got the manual to Nightmare in Dreamland for Kirby. So that's it, guys, for the Game Boy Advance stuff. And now to move on to the DS. This is my original Nintendo DS, which I never ever touch now because the touchpad is so wonky. It's like you touch here and it thinks I'm touching over there. So I mean, this thing looks awful. I feel Nintendo should have, maybe they shouldn't obviously, but for me, when the Nintendo DS Lite came out, it's like that should be how it should have looked, because that just looks so off. But I'll just keep it again, just because that's what I used to play Nintendo DS games on. But now, I much favour my DSi XL that I got when it came out too. I think it's called Wine Red Edition, and the games look spectacular on here. So that's definitely what I favour. And yeah, so let's get on to the DS games, which again, DS, huge part of my childhood. Kind of pretty much as big as the Game Boy Advance was, so because of that, once again, I've got quite a few games to show you. First one I'm going to show you is Another Chord, and this game was one of the very first Nintendo DS games that came out, and it's basically a sort of point and click adventure game. You play as this young girl here who goes to a mysterious island where she believes her father, who she was told by her aunt had died, is still alive, and her mother is dead too, so I believe her aunt adopted her. And she goes on a little mystery sort of exploring the island, find out if her dad is really still there. And it's a really good game. It's not too convoluted. I think it would be a very good starter for people getting into point and click games. But I really like the music, and there's just something about the game which screams old Nintendo DS, because it uses a lot of the DS's functions to very clever ways, especially if you like the sort of practical ways that the Professor Layton games use the DS. So it's quite similar to that, and I think it is a really good game. I really like the story. It's just very charming. The sequel was made for the Nintendo Wii, which I've got, but I haven't played that yet. But I really recommend that. Then we've got Bang-Ai or Spirits, and this is a sequel to, I believe, a Nintendo 64 game which never came out over here. And I've yet to play this one, but I've heard it's a really good mecha third-person shooter, I believe. So look forward to playing that eventually. And then we've got Elite Beat Agents, which a lot of people scream is a classic for the Nintendo DS. And I played it a tiny bit back in the day. This is kind of a rhythm game featuring a lot of famous songs. So they're not really songs that were made for the game. The songs that just incorporate, that were originally made, you know, years and years ago, that were chart songs. So because of that, maybe people might not enjoy it as much, but I think it's excellent. And the plot is basically these guys help people, and by singing songs you help them, and if you beat the song and do well, something good hopefully happens. And most of it was ridiculously absurdist, but there's one or two which actually are very emotionally poignant, I'll say that, which might be a surprise to some people, but this is a classic. Then we've got Chocobo Tales, a Nintendo DS sort of Final Fantasy game, which I haven't played. I've heard it's actually supposed to be quite good. I think it's just a collection of mini games, but I've always found Chocobo really charming, so I thought, why not? Hotel Dusk Room 215 is a detective series that only lasts, I believe, 2 games, and is made by the same people who've done Another Chord. So this one, again, I haven't played yet, but I've heard is actually a lot better than Another Chord, a bit more mature as well, apparently. So I will look forward to that, and I think The Last Window is the name of the sequel to this, which is quite a pricey Nintendo DS game that I hope to pick up soon, especially if I find I enjoy that. Speaking of pricey stuff, this is a one that I picked up thanks to Official Nintendo magazine back in the day. They recommended it, and I saw it for really cheap. and it's become a bit more of a collectible, this one. This is called Infinite Space, which is a JRPG slash space game. And I remember playing this, and I have to replay it, to be honest, because I think I got a few hours into it. And it was basically like baby's first time playing like a first-person shooter or something when they've been playing platformers for all their life. I just found it so different to anything I played before, but not in a so, you know, not in a way where I was like, oh, this is amazing, but I was kind of overwhelmed. So I was like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. So now that I've got, you know, a bit more used to JRPGs and just playing games in general, I should play this again. So, but it's there though. I thought I'd like to do that. I've got another Kirby game with Kirby Power Brain Brush, which is called Kirby Canvas Curse, I think, everywhere else. A very unique game. Basically, you control Kirby using the stylus, and a lot of the touchscreen is used because, once again, this is a very early Nintendo DS title. And it's really good. I like the music in this as well. It's very bit poppy and quite noisy. It's a very interesting sort of take on Kirby's usually very pastoral sounded stuff. It can get quite difficult, this game, especially when controlling Kirby and attempting to beat some of the quite large levels in this as well, but I did beat it, and the only reason I haven't played more of it is because you can basically keep playing the game, and once you beat them you can play as a different character who controls differently, and it would basically be playing the same game 4 times, and I just wasn't that interested. I might go back and play the game as a different character, but I don't feel like playing the game 4 times in a row. But still though, I really enjoyed that. Mario Kart DS, one of the first DS games I ever owned, and because of that, Nevi's, as well as the fact that I think it is of good quality, I think this is one of the best Mario Kart games because of the kart selection, the course selection. I mean, Waluigi Pinball, do you need to say anything else? And the whole mechanic, which I don't know really if it was intended, about drifting in this game, which for many people will find that makes the game broken, but to other people make it even more fun, being able to drift continuous amount of times and just completely obliterate the CPUs. But when you're doing time trials, it's really fun, so I recommend that. And another very early game for me, New Super Mario Bros. DS, the first one, and I remember being in primary school going, look at this, and getting the Mega Mushroom and seeing Mario grow and stomping his way, and just used to always make kids go, whoa, you know, like that. And this is really good. Started off my annoyances with the singing along sort of thing, but never mind. But the mini games and that, because I've never owned Mario Kart 64 Mario Kart 64 DS, I think that's right. Yeah, they've got mini games on there and on here too, and it was the beginning of my interest in gambling, I suppose, because this featured the one and only Casino Poker Luigi, and all those mini games are just so cool. I might have spent more time on gambling away with Luigi than I have playing the actual game itself. So, real classic. Another really classic for me here, this is Nintendogs. I used to love pretending I could have a dog, which was a lot more cheaper and more cleaner, I suppose. A lot less hassle, I suppose, too. And I remember getting this game thinking, I love Labradors, but I wish they had Basset Hounds in it. And they did. When I went to a kennel one time, there was a Basset Hound, so I love this game. And you can do some pretty nasty stuff to the dogs in this game as well. If you know, you know. And then we're going to start with the Pokemon games. So all of these are huge classic games for me. Absolutely, I love these. So we've got Pokemon Diamond, and one of my childhood friends who used to live near us used to always get the other one. So you'd get Pearl. Pokemon Black, you would get White. Never bothered with Black 2, White 2, stuff like that. And to many people, one of the best Pokemon games, one of my favourite games of all time, this. Pokemon Soul Silver and Heart Gold. And I was looking before making this video, and for some reason my Poker Walker has disappeared, and I'm gutted. That's the second time I've lost a Poker Walker. The other one I went out walking when this game first came out and it fell off the little clip thing. And I bought one recently for a decent price and it's gone again. But it's in my house, I don't know where it's gone. It's obviously Poker walked off somewhere. But hey ho, absolutely amazing game. Then we've got Rhythm Paradise, or Rhythm Fever I think called in other territories. And this again is quite an old DS game, but really fun one. It's got a very WarioWare, silly but happy-go-lucky aesthetic to this, and it's really fun. Quite simplistic. They're not so much mini games. You just kind of replay the same sort of song and get used to it and tap at the right time. And this guy here, this little opera dude, I played that one dozens and dozens of times, and I swear I've done perfect, and it just keeps saying I haven't done perfect in it. Like, there's like mixes which get really difficult that I've done perfect in that, but this one, which is like one of the first ones you do, I just couldn't do it. But I think my favourite one, it's not on the back here, I thought it might have been one of these, is when you've got the cheerleader girl singing with these sort of dancing monkeys, and you tap to go with the sort of clapping, and it's the one where it's like, yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hey now, here is my song for you. Yeah, that's right. I wish that I was yours, but I'm too shy, I suppose.
When I first played that, I almost wanted to just listen to the song and not play the song, play the game. But yeah, so I love that game. Sonic Rush, I think this is made by the same people who've done Sonic Advance 1 to 3, and I haven't played this one, but I know it's the first feature of this, is it Rouge, I think? No, it's not Rouge. Blaze, I think, Blaze the Cat. But I've heard these are really good, this is a really good game. There's a sequel called Sonic Rush Adventure, I think, which I don't own. Soul Bubbles, I've heard this is a really good underrated game. I remember official Nintendo magazine giving it a good score, and I'll get around to playing it soon enough. Then we finally got WarioWare, more WarioWare, why not? This was a huge game for me when I was a kid, WarioWare Touched. I used to play that in Breakfast Club, in primary school, all the time. And then WarioWare DIY, which not only contains some pre-made games and micro games, but in this, yes, you can make your own micro games, and I kind of wish I bought this in the day when Nintendo DS Online was a thing and I could actually watch other people's and download them. Never mind. But hey ho, I might one day make my own, which I'm sure would be totally nonsensical, which is perfect for WarioWare. Just wanted to quickly show you as well the trilogy of Professor Layton games too. These were huge in my childhood too. One of the only sort of things that you could get your mum and dad to have a go at, which was the case for me. They hated video games, but they'd always loved Professor Layton. So all three of these are essential. And this one I haven't shown yet because it's the one that I'm currently playing, called Magical Star Sign. This is a sequel to a game that came out on the Gameboy Advance that I don't think came out over in the UK. But this is a really charming, colourful, quite simplistic RPG that I'm really enjoying. Basically, you play as a bunch of kids who all have amazing magical powers that go to a school that teaches these powers, and their teacher gets taken away and captured, and you guys have to basically go and save her. And I've looked it up to see whereabouts I am in this RPG adventure. I'm just over halfway, and I think I might just play a few games in between or something, but that doesn't mean I'm not enjoying it. I'm really enjoying it. There's a lot of humour to it. I think the graphics, the sort of pixel graphics, are awesome on here. Music's really good. Very charming, that's exactly what I want in these sort of games. Okay, so the loose DS games. Again, we've got quite a few actually here. So we've got another Mario and Luigi game. This is Mario and Luigi Bowser's Inside Story. I've heard from a lot of people say it's the best one. Custom Robo Arena. I believe this might have been a game on the Dreamcast, I think. And this is the DS counterpart. And again, it's supposed to be really good, but I haven't played it. We've got a Pokemon Mystery Dungeon game, Explorers of Time. I haven't played any of these, but I've heard this one's really good, and Explorers the Skies is supposed to be excellent, so I might pick that up one day. We've got a Pokemon Ranger game here. I used to own the first Pokemon Ranger game, and it didn't capture us. I beat the game, and I just got a bit sick of doing the whole swirly thing with the stylus. It just got boring to me, and I just didn't find it that interesting. But they made a couple of sequels. I believe this is the second one, Pokemon Ranger Shadows of Alma, and they're supposed to get better and better. So one day, without us trying to be too grouchy about the whole not liking the first one too much, I'll give this a shot and I hope I enjoy it more. Then we've got another Kirby game. This is Kirby Mass Attack, where you control not 1, not 2, but 10 Kirbys. This is one of the last DS games, I believe. I think it came out in 2011. I thought that's a really good one. Of course, it's good, it's Kirby. This is a Dragon Quest game, which I've yet to play. This is Dragon Quest 9. And again, heard it's one of the better Dragon Quest games. There's a lot of them on the DS and 3DS. Then we've got Henry Hatsworth. What the hell is that? Well, this is both an action puzzle platformer and literally a puzzle game as well. Very difficult to describe, you'd have to just look it up and understand yourself. And I used to own this boxed, but I'm going to be honest, this game is one of the hardest games I've ever played in my life. Henry Hatsworth is one of the hardest games I've ever played in my life. That is not a joke. The levels in this are so big, like literally you could spend 40 to 45 minutes on one level, and if you get a game over, you do it all over again. And there's so many one-hit deaths, and let's just say I had to let that anger out on something, and it came at the price of the box. Yeah, so I keep this around just to remind myself how some games, from its title alone, sound stupid, but could be quite surprising in its difficulty. And when I found out when I beat the game there's a hard mode, I was like, no. So I don't think I'll be returning to that anytime soon, which is a shame because the music and it's awesome. The idea of it, the concept is really good, the gameplay is good, but it just goes way overboard in its difficulty, in my opinion at least. Is that all of the DS games now? I'm pretty sure it is. So hey, I'm going to be moving sort of swiftly along with the 3DS. By the way, there's the DSi XL box. I'm just showing you that because here is the 3DS. In box I've got the super special 25th anniversary version, which in here I've still kept it in. I don't have the 3DS itself in here, I've got it down here. But inside here I have what came with it obviously, which is Ocarina of Time 3D, which I did really enjoy. It's a pretty fun game. I've still got the AR cards that you get. Does anyone remember this with the 3DS, where you can take photos of these little cards and they come to life? That was a laugh. I had a one which was like huge like that. You can't even see my hands because it was that big, and I'm stretching them out. And that was fun putting them up in your room. But anyways, blah blah blah. Here's the 3DS itself. And it's only until the last couple of years I really got into the 3DS, because I bought this, you know, when did that anniversary came out? Not too long after the 3DS originally came out. I think I owned like 3 games at the most for like 8 years. I was so disappointed with the 3DS, and I think it's just because the games I just wasn't big on. Like the Ocarina of Time, I already owned that, so why I picked that up I don't know. Maybe it's because I just wanted a sort of special version of the 3DS. I mean, I'm not putting down the 3D version of Ocarina of Time, it's just it wasn't a new game to me, you know. And the few games I did buy afterwards I just wasn't huge on. And I just didn't really do my research and look into what were considered good 3DS games, and that's totally changed over the last few years, so here are the games I own. But I'm too shy, I suppose. Hey! Quickly show the loose 3DS cart I got, which is Kid Icarus Uprising, one of the first 3DS games. Sort of like a third-person shooter, I believe. But really cool, the fact that Nintendo decided to bring Kid Icarus suddenly back. Well, Pit. Yeah, so, anyways, here is Animal Crossing Welcome Amiibo Edition. I don't know why it's called that, I thought it was called New Leaf. Featuring everyone's favourite, the lovely Shih Tzu, I believe she is, and this is considered by many the best Animal Crossing game. I haven't played it yet, I'm going to be totally honest. The only one I've played extensively was the one for the Switch, New Horizons, but I think I'll work my way back and enjoy this. I don't think... Are these in order? I guess they are. Fantasy Life. So, when I was showing you previously that magical star sign, that was made by people called Brownie Brown. And those guys ended up becoming level 5. So the same people technically worked on this, Fantasy Life. and I've heard a lot of great things about this. I've heard it's an absolutely huge game. You could sink hundreds of hours into this game from what I've heard, and will I do that? Maybe it's one day, but I've heard this is a great one, and that's why I picked it up. Anyone for Freaky Forms Deluxe Edition, where you can make your own little special funny critters? And I think that's it. But who doesn't want to do that, eh? I got it for like $5, so who cares? I got a few Kirby games here. This one was the one that got us into Kirby, really, because I got this for a tenner. Kirby's Triple Deluxe. I've still got that goofy sticker. Yeah, still got that big goofy sticker. That was because I swear Kirby, other than being known in Smash Brothers, in the UK, and I didn't know anyone who had a Kirby game. And I think it's only until recently people have really gotten into Kirby. I don't know why. I just never knew anyone who had a Kirby game. And I just picked this up out the blue, just thinking, oh, Kirby game, why not for a tenner? And I loved it. And from there, that's what got us into getting all of the other Kirby games, pretty much. I did have Kirby's Adventure on the Nintendo Wii Virtual Console for years, but that's it, basically. Now, this one I haven't played yet, but I've heard by many it's an amazing game, Planet Robobot. So yes, Kirby in a massive mecha suit. That would be awesome. I've heard this is an awesome game. A Link Between Worlds, this is a Legend of Zelda game, and it's kind of a sequel or a pairing to A Link to the Past, which is a classic Super Nintendo game. And again, I've heard by many this is actually better. So, wow, that's pretty impressive. I've yet to play it, but I'm interested to see if that's true. We've got Dark Moon, which is, I believe, the name of this, Luigi's Mansion 2. Some people were kind of disappointed with that one, I think, because of it being a bit more mission-based, but I thought it was cool. Now, this is one of the games that I got with the 3DS, Mario Kart 7, and I've always had a vendetta against this game. I get people enjoy it, and there's parts of it I do like I think the courses are really cool, but I think it's the AI in this game. Now, even though I grew up on the Wii, which a lot of people say the AI in that is, like the computers are just really unfair, I thought 7 was worse. And I don't know why, there's something about this game I just did not like. I have no idea why, honestly, I really don't, but yeah, I just never returned to that game too much, to be honest. One of my least favourite Mario Kart games. Now here is a very rare one for me, just a one where I got a good deal. A couple of years ago, my mum worked in a charity shop, and I went in just out of the blue because I'd never been in before, and I was chatting away, and I said, oh, do you sell games here? She was like, yeah, I think they sell games just over there in the corner. I went in the corner, and it was this little plastic box, and it had on the side of it, football games, 50p each, and I was like, yeah. But something in us just thought, have a look in anyways, and yes, it was full of FIFA and all that. But for some reason, Pokemon X was in there, and I said, how much is this? 50p? Nice one. So I haven't played this Pokemon game yet, but I can't complain for that price. But when it came out, I did play Pokemon Sun, which I really, really enjoyed. And I'll probably return to it again one day, because it's got me mate Rowlet in it. But yeah, I never bothered with Sword and Shield. And if they patch up this brand new Pokemon game without all the bugs, I'll probably pick that up. But for now, this is the last Pokemon title that I ever played. This is the Professor Layton. They did make more Professor Layton games for the 3DS, but this is the first one. These are like prequel games. And I haven't played this fully, but I did enjoy it from what I played. This is a ridiculous game. This is Tomodachi Life. And this is kind of My Sims Me edition. And some of the stuff you can do in this is absolutely just mad, and I love it for that. And the one that drew me to this is the karaoke thing that you can do in here, where your Miis will perform a song and sing a song that you type in the lyrics to. And if you go on YouTube, some people have made some very interesting songs, and I have too. Now, this one I got with Mario Kart 7, Super Mario 3D Land, and I played all of this game. Like, I guess to a point where once you've done everything, it just feels like there's a few things that that added more to the game. I think they're like a mushroom. Sorry. I think there's like a mushroom house that keeps appearing, and it feels like if you do more and more, you unlock more things. But I've done everything in that game. I just kind of found it a bit in one ear out the other, or in one eye out the other. I thought it was good. I mean, for its time, attempting to make a game like that was cool and all, but I didn't find it that challenging from what I remember, and that's the thing, from what I remember, I didn't find it very memorable. Sorry. But I do own Super Mario 3D World now for the Switch with Bowser's Fury, so I hope it's a better version of that. And last but not least, definitely not least, WarioWare Gold. And this is a very special one because not only is it WarioWare, which I absolutely adore, but the thing about this was it was what sparked my interest in trying more 3DS games, because this was on sale on Amazon one time. I thought, oh well, I'm not bothered about 3DS games. In fact, I wasn't bothered about games for ages back in the day anyways, but I thought, it's a WarioWare game, why not? And it's just like a best of, basically, where it's recreated all classic mini micro games and brought them all in one package. And because of that, it's amazing. It's everything I could want really in a WarioWare game, in fact more, because you'll know from playing the micro games that if you go through the characters, the different stages, they'll have like a little intro and outro. Well, this is fully voice acted, and it's expanded upon way more than the other titles. And I love it for that, because it just makes us wish, Nintendo, somebody please make an animated series of the WarioWare characters. Let us follow a series with them in Diamond City, because these characters are so fun. I don't want to wait 4 years every time just to see another 5 minutes of me mate Mike the Robot, or Jimmy T, or Ashley, or Dribble and Spitz, and Kronk, and Wario himself, you know, Dr. Krygo, Penny, Kat and Anna. It's just awesome, man. I love it. Please Nintendo, do that. It would be a hit. Never mind. So with that, everybody, oh my god, my voice is breaking. That is all of my Nintendo themed handheld stuff, and very quickly we're going to wrap things up with my other handheld that I own, and this is this is the PS Vita. Oh my god, I'm a bit dizzy there. Yeah, the PS Vita is a new one that I've gotten recently, and it's because, again, I just kind of got it at a good price. One of my friends, Mike, sold it to me for a very nice price, and he taught us about how you can make the PS Vita better, let us say. And because of that, I'm playing all of the PSP games that I'm interested in, and PS1 games that are available on the store that are just ridiculously priced over here. I'm playing them legit on the Vita. But in terms of buying Vita games, I can't really do that, because I modded it a bit where, because of the irritating idea that Sony had where they were going to make these stupid peripheral SD cards, special memory cards that are really expensive, I modded it so I've got in like a 256 gig SD card, which is good because I can play all these games in one go, but it's bad because if I ever wanted to own a physical game, I would have to swap it out with that SD card, meaning I wouldn't be able to save anything. So from now on, it's going to be digital only on the Vita. But from what I've played, I really enjoyed the Vita, and it's a shame that it crashed, because it would have been interesting if Nintendo had a bit more competition alongside the 3DS, or afterwards. And I know Valve is technically in competition with them with the Steam Deck now, compared to what Nintendo were doing when they were basically just doing handhelds by themselves with the Switch. But still, it would be nice to see if Sony didn't drop the ball with this and done more stuff. So yeah, that's everything, guys. I don't own an Atari Lynx, I don't own a Game Gear or anything, I'm just not interested. But that is my handheld collection. I'm sure there might be one or two that's lying about I haven't shown you, but that is basically everything that I own. And I hope you've enjoyed this series. I've really enjoyed talking about all these things. I'm not going to enjoy picking all of these things up, but I forget about that, and I will remember just enjoying this video, making this video and talking with you guys. And once again, like I said in part 1, please give us any video game recommendations, especially if there's certain games I've picked up where you think, oh well, if he likes them, you might like these. And let us know if you know, the games that I've talked about here, you've taken them as a recommendation and you've bought them yourself and enjoying them. I'd really like to hear that. So I will make a follow-up in probably about a year's time, but that's it for now. So once again, thank you very much for watching, everybody. I really appreciate it. Hope you take care of yourselves, and bye for now.
Very well done.